She had one job inside his building, and a second job he knew nothing about. For 3 weeks, Zina sat at a real desk in a real office on the 14th floor of Damian Cole's tower, watching everything, reporting what mattered, telling him what he didn't want to hear. That was the job he gave her. But the second job, the one she had been running for 8 years, across 5 cities, through hunger and danger and silence, that one was hers alone. She was looking for the man who ordered her father killed. And now, for the first time in 8 years, she believed he was close. Not just close. She believed he was already inside this world. Watching her. Waiting. What she didn't know yet, what would change everything, was that the man Damian Cole was about to invite deeper into his operation was the exact man Zina had been hunting since she was 11 years old. And the moment their worlds collided, she would have to make a choice no one had prepared her for. Protect the mission or tell Damian the truth. She couldn't do both. Not for long. There is a kind of woman who learns to want very little. Not because she has nothing. Because wanting too much is dangerous when you are also hunting. Zina had wanted one thing for 8 years. One name. One face. One moment of truth that would close the chapter her father's death had opened the night she was 11 years old. Now she sat at a real desk in a real chair, 14th floor, Damian Cole's building, and outside the window, Lagos moved the way it always moved. Loud. Indifferent. Unbothered by the weight she was carrying. She had a title. Damian created it himself. Head of Intelligence Assessment. Nobody fully understood what it meant. That was the point. Her job, as Damian explained it, watch everything. Report what matters. Tell me what I don't want to hear. She had been doing exactly that for 3 weeks. But there was a second job. One Damian did not know about. One she had been running for 8 years before she ever heard the name Damian Cole. She was looking for the man who ordered her father killed. And she now believed, more than she had ever believed anything, that he was somewhere inside this world. Not far. Not hidden. Close. Patient. Watching her back. Damian noticed the change in himself before he could name it. He had always worked alone inside his own head. Made decisions fast. Did not consult. Did not second-guess. That was how he had built everything, through cold certainty that left no room for doubt or softness. But now, 3 weeks after Zina joined his operation, he caught himself doing something new. He would reach a decision, a route change, a meeting location, a personnel choice, and then pause. Not from uncertainty. Because he had started asking a question he had never asked before. What would she notice here that I'm not noticing? It irritated him. He was not a man who relied on other people's vision. He had built his entire life on the belief that depending on another person's eyes was weakness. And yet, she had seen what none of his paid professionals saw. From a bridge, with bare feet and an empty stomach. She had been right when everyone with a salary and a uniform had been wrong. That was not easy to forget. He wasn't sure if trusting her was wisdom or vulnerability. He wasn't sure there was a difference anymore. He picked up his phone and called her extension. Come to my office. I want your read on something. The man Zina was hunting had a name she had written in the back of a small notebook 8 years ago. Alhaji Sul Bacha. She had never spoken it aloud. Names spoken aloud travel. And this one was too dangerous to let move through the air carelessly. Bacha was not a criminal in the way Damian Cole was a criminal. Damian operated in the gray spaces between legal and illegal with a directness that was almost honest. He knew what he was and didn't hide it from himself. Bacha was different. He was a legitimate man. A businessman with government contracts, charitable foundations, and newspaper photographs showing him smiling beside ministers. He gave speeches about economic development. He wore expensive agbada to Friday prayers and smiled for cameras. He was also the man who had signed the order that sent men to a logistics office in Port Harcourt 8 years ago, men who found her father working late on documents he was not supposed to understand. Her father had understood them perfectly. That was the problem. He died that night. The official report said accident. Zina had been 11. But she had already read the documents her father copied and hidden before they came for him. She had been reading them ever since. When Zina entered Damian's office, He had spread 3 photographs across the desk. "Tell me what you see," he said. She looked without touching them. 3 men at what appeared to be a hotel rooftop gathering. Drinks in hand. Relaxed postures. Social looking, but almost certainly not. "The man on the left is performing comfort," she said. "His glass is held too tight. He's new to this level." Damian nodded. "Junior contact." "What else?" "The man in the center is the host, the other 2 angled toward him without realizing it. He controls the space." She paused. "The man on the right hasn't looked at either of them. His eyes are past the camera. He came to be seen, not to meet anyone." Damian was quiet. "Then, the man on the right is Alhaji Sul Bacha, senior political ally. 6 years. I'm considering bringing him closer, deeper into legitimate operations." He watched her carefully. "Any read?" Zina kept her eyes on the photograph. Her heart hit her ribs like a fist. But her face gave nothing. "He looks like a man with patience," she said evenly. "The kind of patience that comes from knowing something others don't know. Something he has decided they will never know." She set the photograph down. And said nothing else. That night, Zina sat in her small apartment and stayed very still for a long time. Alhaji Bacha. She had traced the logistics network her father uncovered through years of invisible work. She had followed money across 3 states and 4 shell companies. She had lived rough and moved carefully for 8 years. And she had ended up here, working for a man who wanted to bring her target closer. The irony was almost too heavy to carry. She could use this. If Bacha moved deeper into Damian's world, she would have access she had never had before. She could gather evidence. Build a case. Finally do what her father deserved. But Damian did not know. He was considering trusting Bacha because Bacha had kept his hands clean for 6 years while using other people's hands for the dirty work. If she told Damian the truth now, everything would change. He would move against Bacha too fast. Evidence would vanish. And Bacha would know she existed. She was not ready for that. Not yet. She opened her notebook to the back page. Looked at the name. Then closed it. Tomorrow she would go back to work. That was all. Bacha came to Damian's building on a Wednesday morning. Zina positioned herself in the corridor, carrying a file to another office. Legitimate. Unremarkable. The kind of presence no one remembers. She watched him walk through the lobby. He was smaller than she had imagined. She had built him large in her mind over 8 years, the way children build the things that hurt them into giants. But he was ordinary looking. 60 perhaps. Neat gray suit. Calm face. The deliberate stillness of a man who had spent decades deciding how much of himself to show. He shook Damian's hand and smiled. Then, as they walked toward the elevator, his eyes swept the corridor the way experienced men sweep rooms, not frantically, just thoroughly. Long habit. His gaze passed over Zina completely. She was holding a file. Walking purposefully. She looked like someone who entirely and completely belonged. He did not see her. She had spent 8 years perfecting exactly this, the art of being present without being registered. But as the elevator doors closed, something shifted in her chest. He was real. He was here. She was now close enough to breathe the same air he breathed. Damian invited Bacha to a private lunch that afternoon. Zina had access to his schedule, not every room. She had no legitimate reason to be near that dining room during a private meeting. But Damian's private dining room had a ventilation point near an adjacent file room that carried sound poorly, but carried it. Softly. In fragments. Just enough. She had identified it on her 3rd day. She had noted it carefully. She had not used it until now. The conversation was careful on both sides. Business language. Legitimate interests. Bacha spoke about a government infrastructure project and his ability to smooth certain approvals. Damian listened and asked precise questions. Nothing incriminating. But near the end, Bacha said something that made her go completely still. "I heard you had some internal difficulties recently. Loyalty problems. I hope it's resolved." "It is," Damian said. "Good. A man like you needs the people around him to be entirely what they claim to be." A pause. No hidden agendas. No private purposes. No second reasons. The words were smooth. friendly, the concern of a senior ally. But Zina heard the double edge underneath. He was not speaking about Chukwu. He was speaking about her. She said nothing to Damian that day. Or the next. She went back to her documents instead. The copies her father had made and carefully hidden before they came for him, photographs of pages she had carried since childhood, moving them from city to city, keeping them dry and safe through everything. She spread them on her apartment floor and looked with fresh eyes. The logistics network her father uncovered had 3 levels. At the bottom, transport companies moving undeclared goods. In the middle, financial accounts processing the money. At the top, a name authorizing the whole structure. That name was redacted in most documents. But her father had been meticulous. In 2 places, in his own handwriting in the margins, he had written initials. S.B. Sul Bacha. She had known this for years. But knowing and proving were different things. Now she had something she had never had before, physical proximity. She also had something she hadn't expected, a complication. Because the more time she spent inside Damian's world, the more she understood that Bacha's connection to that world was not accidental. Whatever Bacha was planning, it involved Damian directly. And it was not finished. Not even close. She told Damian half the truth on a Thursday evening. He was in his office late. She knocked, entered, and sat without waiting. He had told her in her first week she didn't need permission. Bacha has a history I think you should know about, she said. Damian set down his pen. What kind? There was a logistics network out of Port Harcourt, moving goods across West Africa through shell companies. Government contracts as cover. A worker who understood the financial structure flagged it internally. She paused. That worker died before he could report formally. Damian went still. You're saying Bacha was connected? The initials in the documents match his name. And the timing, the network collapsed 6 years ago, exactly when Bacha shifted to legitimate operations. Why did it collapse? Because the political environment changed. Not because anyone stopped it. Damian leaned back. Quiet for a long time. How do you know all this? He asked. She had prepared for this question. I was in Port Harcourt during that period. I heard things. I paid close attention to the people involved. Not a lie. Not the whole truth. He looked at her a long moment. Then nodded. For now. Bacha called Damian's office Monday morning. He wanted a second meeting. Broader, proposing a joint investment structure involving 3 of Damian's legitimate companies and a government infrastructure fund. On the surface, exactly the kind of opportunity Damian's expanding operations needed. Damian told him he would think about it. Then called Zina. He's moving faster than a careful man should, Damian said. Because something is pushing him, she said. A careful man speeds up when he feels a deadline others can't see. What deadline? I don't know yet. She paused. But the investment structure he's proposing, 3 of your companies combined with a government fund, do you know what that gives him access to? Damian thought. His jaw tightened. My financial records. Across all 3 companies. Under the cover of a joint venture audit. He doesn't want your money, Zina said quietly. He wants to know what you have. Where it is. How it moves. Damian walked to the window. Below, Lagos moved in its usual chaos. He's building a picture, Damian said. Of you. What do you suggest? Let me keep watching. Give me a little more time. He will show us what he wants. Bacha made his first mistake in the 3rd week. He sent a request to Damian's office for a specific property deed, worded as routine due diligence. Reasonable on the surface. But the document he requested was not what genuine due diligence would need first. It was a document you request when you already know the company structure and need one confirming detail. Zina brought this to Damian without emotion. He knows more about your companies than he should. He's not researching. He's confirming. Someone inside is feeding him. One person. Someone with access to company structures, but not operations. Damian pulled out a list: administrative staff, legal team, compliance officers. I'll need a few days, Zina said. She found the source in 2. A junior compliance officer named Remy. Young, underpaid, easily flattered. Approached 6 months ago at a social function. Providing small pieces ever since, never enough to feel significant, always enough to build a picture. Remy didn't even know who he was ultimately feeding. He thought he was passing small harmless things to a vague business contact. He had no idea how far the chain went. That was how Batcha worked. Clean hands. Long chains. Nobody at the bottom could see the top. Damian wanted to move immediately. Identify the problem. Remove it. Seal the gap. Zina stopped him. If Remy disappears, Batcha knows you found the leak. He'll change approach. You lose the thread. You want me to leave a leak in my own organization? Feed it, she said. Damian looked at her. Give Remy information to pass on. Almost true. Specific enough to feel real, wrong in one critical detail that only matters to someone planning something. Damian was quiet. A look crossed his face she was beginning to recognize, a man who had spent years being the most strategic person in any room, encountering someone who thought differently. Not better. Differently. What detail? He asked. The location of your primary financial reserve account. Tell Remy, without telling him you're telling him, that the account is at a specific bank. Make it plausible. Then watch what Batcha does. If he moves against that account, we know his plan, his timing, and we have evidence of the attempt. Damian turned the idea over. Clean. Patient. Exactly, he realized, how Zina herself had operated for years. Do it, he said quietly. He was already thinking 3 steps ahead. She was too. 3 things happened the week that followed. First, Remy received the false information naturally. Zina engineered an overheard conversation that Remy caught walking past an open door, genuinely accidental, except for the deliberate fact that the door was open. Second, Batcha made contact with a financial institution in Accra. Not the bank Damian actually used, the one fed through Remy. The contact was subtle. An inquiry about account verification procedures. Exactly what would precede an attempt to redirect funds. Damian received confirmation through a long-standing contact at that institution. He came to Zina's office with the document in his hand. He was going to take my money, Damian said. Almost quiet. Processing. He was going to try. He didn't know the account was empty. Damian sat down. Turned the document over. This is evidence, he said. The beginning of it. Enough to confront. Not yet enough to destroy. Then the third thing, something Zina had not told Damian. Batcha had made another move that same week. He had made inquiries about Zina herself. Through channels she recognized because she had used similar ones for 8 years. He was looking for her real identity. He had found something. She discovered Batcha's inquiry through a contact in Abuja who traded information like goods. The message someone had been asking about a young woman recently added to Damian Cole's circle. No name, just a description. Female. Young. Came from the streets. Rumored to know things she should not. The person asking had offered significant money for a full identity profile. Zina sat with this for a full day. Batcha was not certain who she was. Her sudden appearance after the betrayal had registered as unusual. But he didn't have her name yet. He didn't have Port Harcourt. He didn't know whose daughter she was. She had perhaps 2 weeks before he found out. Maybe less. Everything had changed. She had planned to move slowly, building evidence over months. Now the timeline had collapsed. When Batcha found her, and he would understand immediately why she was here. He would move against her before she could move against him. She had one choice. Tell Damian the truth. All of it. Not the half she had given him. The whole thing, her father, Port Harcourt, 8 years, the notebook with the name written in the back. Tonight. She knocked on his office door at 9 in the evening. He was still there. He was usually still there at 9. She walked in, sat down, and looked at him directly. I need to tell you something. All of it this time. He set down what he was reading. He gave her his full attention. She started at the beginning. Her father, Emmanuel Adeora, a logistics analyst in Port Harcourt. Honest in a world that punished honesty. The documents he uncovered. The initials in the margins. The night the men came. She told it without drama. The way you tell something carried so long that the weight is familiar, not light, but known. She told him about the 8 years. The cities. The careful invisible life. The documents she had protected like living things. She told him how recognizing Claude and his convoy had not been pure coincidence. She had been tracking the edges of Batch's network for years, learning its faces. She told him that warning him had been genuine. But getting close to Damian was also the closest she had ever come to Batcha. She told him about the notebook. Then she looked at him and waited. Damian said nothing for a long time. Zina did not fill the silence. She had said what needed saying. When he spoke, his voice was controlled. But she had learned to hear what lived underneath his control. "You used me to get to him," he said. "I used the opportunity," she said. "I didn't manufacture the threat to you. That was real. Everything I did to protect you is real. But your reason for being here." "My reason for staying started as him," she said carefully. "It has become more than that." She held his gaze. "I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to understand the difference." He stood, walked to the window, stood there a long time. "Your father. Port Harcourt. 8 years ago." "Yes. I had dealings with a logistics network in Port Harcourt 8 years ago," he said slowly. "Before I understood what I was connected to. I cut the connection when I learned." He turned. "If your father's documents showed the full structure, they would have shown my name. At the edges. But present." The room was very quiet. "Did you know about my father?" she asked. "No," he said. "I swear to you." "No." She believed him. Not because believing was easier. Because she had spent 8 years learning to read people carefully, and everything she had observed about Damian pointed toward a man who was many things, but not a liar in the ways that mattered. He had wrongdoing in his past. He had not hidden that. He had told her what he was on the first night clearly enough that she could have walked away. But ordering a man killed for knowing too much, that was a different kind of wrong. And it was not in him. "Then we have the same problem," she said. He came back to his desk and sat. "Batcha. He connected us both 8 years ago. Your name gave him cover, legitimate business mixed with illegal. When you pulled out, his structure weakened. He rebuilt without you." She paused. "He's been managing you at a distance ever since. Monitoring. Not accountable. Until now. He's moving against me because you survived Chukwu's betrayal. He expected you to be gone. When you weren't, he needed a new plan. The joint venture was the new plan." Damian looked at her. "Your father deserves justice," he said. "Yes," she said simply. "Then let's build it properly." They worked together as genuine partners for the first time. Not employer and employee. Two people with different skills aimed at the same target. Damian brought resources, his network, his contacts, his ability to move money and people and information through systems Zina had never accessed alone. Zina brought something rarer: 8 years of patient documentation. The photographs of her father's copied pages. The financial trail built city by city. The deep understanding of how Batch's network thought. Over 10 days, they assembled something neither could have built alone. The picture was complete and damning. Batch's network had never stopped. It had restructured. Changed geography but kept its logic. 3 countries now instead of 1. More government cover. Better insulation between the top and operating layers. And at the center of every significant node, a financial fingerprint that Zina's father had first identified and that Zina had spent 8 years learning to follow. "This is enough," Damian said on the 10th day. "For which court?" Zina asked. He looked at her. It was a real question. "What do you want?" he asked. She thought about her father. "I want the truth known. Publicly. On record. So it cannot be buried again." The move against Batcha required 3 things in the correct order. First, the financial evidence needed to reach the right hands. Not the police initially, but the specific investigative journalists and international financial monitors who had been circling Batch's network for years without the key piece that made everything connect. Zina knew exactly who these people were. She had been watching them almost as long as she had been watching Batcha. Damian provided secure channels to get the information to them cleanly, without exposing either of them as the source. Second, Batcha's inquiry into Zina's identity needed to be redirected. His network would find her eventually. But Damian's contacts fed the searchers a false trail, a different woman, a different story, enough detail to slow the search while everything else moved into position. Third, Zina's condition, stated clearly and accepted without argument. The evidence of her father's death needed to be included. Not as background, as a central part of the case. The killing of Emmanuel Adeora was not a footnote. It was the origin. It belonged in the record. Damian agreed to all three conditions immediately. He did not negotiate. He did not suggest changes. He said simply yes. All of it. She had prepared arguments. She did not need them. Batcha received the first sign something was wrong on a Tuesday morning. The way careful men receive bad news, not as a loud alarm, but as a small wrongness the body registers before the mind names it. A journalist he knew had published a preliminary piece. Nothing specific. A general investigation into government-adjacent financial networks in West Africa. Except the piece used one specific financial term from the internal language of his network. Not something any journalist could discover through normal means. Someone had given it to them. He made calls. Carefully. By Wednesday evening he understood that something significant had moved against him. He didn't yet know the shape. But he had survived 30 years in dangerous spaces by trusting the feeling of a trap. He felt it now. He called Damian on Thursday morning. Warm. Friendly. A senior ally checking in. Damian took the call. Calm, pleasant, giving nothing away. After the call ended, he came to Zina's office. He's scared, Damian said. Yes. He'll move fast now. Let him, she said. Fast means visible. Visible means evidence. In the next 48 hours, Batcha made 4 rapid moves, each designed to protect himself, each adding another layer to the case against him. Patient men become dangerous when they panic. But panicking men make mistakes. The confrontation happened on a Friday. Not in a dramatic location. In a conference room in a government building in Abuja, neutral ground, requested by investigators who had now received and verified enough to act. Batcha came with lawyers. Damian was there as a witness, not a subject. His early-stage connection to the network 8 years ago had been disclosed fully by Damian himself, voluntarily, before anyone asked. It was noted. It was not the focus. Zina was not in the room. Her choice, made clearly. My face gives him something to use. He'll make the story about the woman hunting him instead of what he did. You've waited 8 years, Damian said. You deserve to be there. I deserve the outcome, not the performance. So she sat in a car outside and waited. Damian sent a message at 11:47. 3 words. He is answering. She closed her eyes. She pressed her hands flat together in her lap the way her father used to press his hands together when something important was finished. She sat very still. Then she opened her eyes and looked out at the street. Ordinary Abuja. Entirely indifferent. Moving on. Batcha did not confess immediately. Careful men almost never do. He deflected, questioned, cast out, deployed his lawyers with practiced skill. But the investigators had the financial records. The trail Zina had built across 8 years. The communications captured during Batcha's panicked moves of the past week. And they had her father's documents, the originals, carefully preserved through 8 years of hard living. Never damaged. Never lost. The handwriting in the margins. The initials. The dates placing Batcha at the center of the network at exactly the moment the order was given. SB. The investigator placed the photographs on the table one at a time. Batcha looked at them. Something shifted in his face. Not guilt, it was too late in his life for guilt to move easily. But recognition. A man who understands, finally, that what he buried has been dug up. These documents, his lawyer began, were kept by the daughter of the man your client had killed, the investigator said. She has carried them for 8 years. Silence. Batcha looked at Damian across the table. Damian looked back at him steadily. Said nothing. There was nothing left to say by anyone in that room. Justice after 8 years does not feel the way you expect. Zina had imagined this moment many times. Different cities, different nights, different hard places she had slept while carrying her father's documents. She had imagined relief. Something like fire going out. What she actually felt, sitting in the car outside, was something quieter. Damian came out at 12:30. He got in beside her. He did not speak immediately. Then it's moving forward. Formally. His lawyers can delay but cannot stop it. Zina nodded. Your father's name is in the record, Damian said. Officially. As the person who first documented this network. Who died because of it. A pause. His documentation is being treated as a foundational source. She nodded again. Zina. She looked at him. I'm sorry my name appeared in those early documents. I know it wasn't the same level. I know I didn't know about your father. But my presence made it easier for Bacha. I'm sorry for that. She looked at him a long moment. My father would have understood the difference, she said. He was good at understanding structures. Outside, Abuja moved. Ordinary. Indifferent. She let herself feel everything, all of it, for 60 seconds. Then she exhaled. They drove back to Lagos the following morning. Somewhere between Abuja and the city, Damian said something he had been carrying. You could have used me differently. When you first came to my convoy, you could have let the assassination happen and approached whoever came into power afterward. Less complicated for your purposes. I know, she said. Why didn't you? She was quiet. Because I watched you for weeks before I warned you. And what I saw was someone who, despite everything, was not Bacha. You operate in gray spaces. But you have a line. You decided that from watching a convoy. From watching what you did with the power you had. How your men talked about you when they didn't know anyone was listening. A pause. People who fear someone talk about them differently from people who respect them. Your men respected you. Even Chukwu, before he turned. That means something. Damian was quiet for a long time. What happens now? For you. The network Bacha ran doesn't disappear because he answers for it. The people below him are still operating. That's a long job. Yes, she said. He looked at the road ahead. Then it's fortunate you have resources now. 6 weeks later, Zina stood at her father's grave in Port Harcourt. The grave was modest. A concrete marker with his name and dates and a small cross. The groundskeeper had kept the grass cut without anyone asking. She placed the photograph at the grave, the one she had carried since she was 11. Him smiling, holding a wrench, standing in front of his small repair shop. The edges were soft from years of handling. She left it there. The truth was in official records now. It would move through courts slowly. But it would move. Bacha's name was attached to her father's death in a document that could not be quietly buried. Emmanuel Adaora had known what he was looking at. He had been brave enough to copy it. He had trusted that his daughter would know what to do. He had been right. Damian had driven her here and waited at the gate. He understood, without being told, that this was something she needed without an audience. She stood at the grave a long time, then walked back to the gate. He straightened when he saw her coming. Ready? He asked. Yes, she said. And she meant it in more ways than one. Stay dangerous. Stay loved. Stay awake. Subscribe for more of these stories. Hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this story.